Hi everyone. Welcome to our channel and enjoy your viewing. We will be very happy if you like and subscribe. The brother of the main character is Franz Festa. He is a handsome boy with black hair that keeps falling into his big light blue eyes. All men in the world like Franz. A carriage pulled by one horse stops near a luxurious castle located in a picturesque mountainous area. From the window of the castle looks a girl, whose dark hair is decorated with a blue bow. She is curious to know who has arrived at her family's residence. A black-haired boy in an expensive green suit gets out of the carriage. Two men with suitcases in their hands and a maid are standing near the arrival. Franz raises his head and looks somewhat guiltily out the window. The girl, the guest's sister, looks displeased. Her eyes are blue like her brother's with an angry glare, and her lips are tightly pursed. Tea party in the castle. Franz tells the family about the reason for his visit. He smiles nervously and says that he missed his cat Hertz. Franz's sister drinks tea in silence with her eyes downcast. The mother, a woman with brown hair in a bun, says that of course the boy missed him, because he was in another city for a long time. A tall black-haired man with a neatly trimmed mustache, the head of the family, does not share his wife's enthusiasm. It seems that he is not very happy to see his son, because he left the dormitory for no good reason. The man raises his eyebrows and orders Franz to go back. The boy jumps up sharply and begs his father for permission to stay at home for a while. He justifies this desire by the fact that he is very worried about his beloved cat. However, the head of the family stops his son with a raised hand and a firm, "Enough." Wrinkles appear on the man's forehead from rage. Through clenched jaws, he says that Franz has nothing to worry about. His cat is very well looked after. Franz's father gets up from his easy chair and in a tone that does not tolerate objection, announces that he will send a postbird to the Cartier dormitory. Cartier is the school where Franz studies. The boy keeps asking his father to let him stay at home for a while. Franz's sister looks at her brother's hand with wide eyes. She wants to say something, but holds back. Franz clenches his hands into fists and literally begs to let him stay for another week, or at least 3 days. Meanwhile, Franz's sister is getting angrier and angrier. She is annoyed by her brother's weak-mindedness, his fear of confronting his father. The boy tries to say confidently and loudly that in 3 days he will return to the dormitory. But immediately after these words, Franz looks at his sister in fear, as if asking if he did everything right. The girl's fingers tightly squeeze the dress. Her gaze is still on her brother, who has his back turned to her. Franz grabs his hand and lowers his eyes, unable to utter a word. Finally, the boy's sister decides to take matters into her own hands. She gets up and calls her brother by name. Franz looks around and looks at the girl with eyes wide open from fear. Her eyes are burning with anger. Loudly to get her parents' attention, she asks her brother if he can take off his clothes. The mother, surprised by such a question, covers her mouth with her palm. The father sharply turns his head in the direction of the children. Franz asks his sister why he should do this. But the girl, instead of answering, measures him with an icy gaze and resolutely orders the servants to undress her brother. They obediently carry out the order. Franz's face is sweating. He covers himself with his hands and tries to resist the servants. However, they say that they must carry out the order. The boy's family is watching this picture. The girl asks the servants to take off her shirt. Franz begins to shout and asks the servants not to do this. A green jacket flies to the floor first, then a shirt. Surprised and at the same time scared, the mother asks her daughter, "Kayla, what are you?" But the girl cuts her off mid-sentence and tells her to see what Franz had to go through. The whole family looks at the boy in shock. Half-undressed, Franz stands in the middle of the room with his arms around himself. His body is covered in bruises and scratches. The boy's mother looks at her son with horrified eyes. Father Franz's face radiates pure rage. He loudly asks where the boy got these scars from. Then the man can't hold back and starts screaming. He wants to know who dared to treat his son so cruelly. Franz's father also shouts that he will go to Cartier right now. The guy himself is against such an idea. He is on his knees and begs his father not to go anywhere. Tears flow down Franz's cheeks. His father's gaze was mixed with compassion and anger. He blames his son for not using chouette. He said if he did that, it wouldn't have happened. Meanwhile, Franz's mother and sister are sitting on the couch. The mother shakes in shock, and Kayla glares at her. Then the woman gets up and approaches her huddled son. She, not holding back her tears, hugs the guy by the shoulders and tells her husband to stop reading the notes to Franz because he is already feeling bad. The man glances at his wife and son, exhales sharply but falls silent. Kayla, contemplating this spectacle, realizes that if she does not act now, everything will be the same as before. Morally killed Franz, who is now so pathetically clinging to his mother, will return to the dormitory and the Festus family will fall. The girl collects her thoughts and firmly addresses the mother, who is still hugging her son and the gloomy father. Kayla says she has something to tell them. Franz's sister stands in the middle of the room. One of her hands rests on her heart, the other is clenched into a fist. The girl says that she will become a knight of the Festus family instead of her brother. The reaction of all family members is ambiguous. Franz and mother look confused. The father, who has not yet moved away from the previous events, begins to shout again that it is the heir who should protect the Festus family. But Kayla interrupts the man and says that Franz has the mind of a scientist. There is not an iota of chivalry in him. The boy himself looks at his sister in confusion. The father puts 2 fingers to his head and tiredly says that studying at the Cartier Academy cannot be given up so easily. The husband tries to prove to his daughter that the son of the Festus family must obtain a diploma from the academy. Otherwise, the empire will not recognize his right to inherit. The girl is not going to give up so quickly. She says that in the imperial order, all 3 guardian commanders were women of the Festa family. So, she, Kayla, can also become the commander of the guardians. The girl shouts these words directly into her father's face. The man realizes that it is useless to argue with Kayla, but makes a last attempt to stop her. He puts his hand on the girl's shoulder and carefully says that a person who wants to become a knight must train from a young age, and Kayla did not even hold a sword in her hands. The girl barely smiles and admits that she didn't hold it. Yet, Kayla looks at her brother as if expecting something. The girl asks Franz to confess to his father what he wants to be. The boy is a little afraid to tell his father the truth and tries to gather his thoughts. He lowers his head and clenches the hand pressed to his chest into a fist. In the end, Franz loudly appeals to his father. True, although the boy is trying to look as confident as possible, his voice is shaking. Father and Kayla stare intently at Franz. Meanwhile, the boy says that he wants to be a scientist. His face at these words radiates determination and confidence that he, Franz Festa, will not give up his intentions. The boy's father turns his head to the side. He looks displeased, to say the least. What cannot be said about Franz's sister? Her gaze becomes gentler and an encouraging smile appears on her lips. Kayla stands in the middle of the room again and looks at her angry but silent father, her shocked mother, and her slightly confused brother. The girl says that she will go to the Cartier Academy. The mother is frightened by Kayla's decision. She desperately tries to stop her daughter. But the girl closes her eyes and calmly, but confidently says that she will handle it. Kayla stomps her foot and continues her speech. The girl asks her parents to give her Shuei brother. Franz himself clutches his jacket with his hand and looks at his sister in bewilderment, unable to believe that she was able to go against age-old traditions, against the will of her father and mother. Someone from the family tells the girl that she already has a citro. Kayla glances thoughtfully at her hand and agrees with that statement. On the girl's wrist is a small gray sign in the form of a shield. This is citro. The owner of this sign does not need to raise a sword. But Kayla quickly finds a solution to this problem. She looks somewhere to the side and says that she will hand over the sword to Franz. The father grabs his head and exhales loudly, trying to calm down. The man understands that he will not be able to convince Kayla and Franz to do everything properly. But he does not like that the children do not obey him at all. The boy and the girl, realizing that they have won this difficult battle with parental authority, look at each other with satisfaction. The top floor of the Festa family estate. In the middle of the library-like room is a large magic circle that emits a blue glow. Franz and Kayla's father recites a spell from an ancient book. According to the incantation, one who wishes to receive the power and patronage of the Spirit King must once again surrender the sword to the possession of the earth. Also, this person must remove the seal that was imposed with the help of a blood oath. At these words, the sign in the form of a cross on Franz's hand begins to bleed. Small drops of blood fall directly onto the magic circle. Focused, Kayla, standing behind her brother, watches the scene intently. A great sword with a golden handle ends up in the hands of the son of the Festus family. Franz, dressed in a luxurious suit, looks a little sadly at this family heirloom. Suddenly, the father calls Kayla, who is fully prepared to participate in the ceremony, and says that it is her turn. Meanwhile, Franz returns to his sister. His look seems to tell the girl that everything will be fine. Kayla approaches her father with a scroll in her hands. It can be seen that she is somewhat worried but does not show it. The father asks his daughter to give him her hand, with which she will apply the seal. Kayla complies with the request. The man warns the girl that it will hurt a little and then takes a knife and makes a small cut on the daughter's palm. Kayla's blood, like her brother's, ends up in a magic circle. The girl looks fascinated at this picture and goes deep into her thoughts. With a sharp voice, the father brings his daughter back to the real world. The man orders Kylie to read the contract. The girl obediently unfolds the scroll and begins to speak the words of the agreement. Kayla repeats out loud what her father said recently. She who wishes to receive the power and patronage of the Spirit King swears an oath on blood. During the reading of this text, a blue glow pours over the daughter of the Festus family. Kayla then says that she swears allegiance to the spirits. The sword flies out of the hands of a confused Franz and begins to circle over his sister. The girl concludes the oath with the words, "Let the agreement be valid until the blood of Festus does not disappear from these lands." Kayla opens her blue eyes wide and clenches one hand into a fist. The other girl puts it forward so that the sword, which descends incredibly quickly, will seal it. On the upper side of the palm of the daughter of the Festus family appears a neat mark of the Shui, which formerly belonged to Franz. Kayla looks at her hand with a slight sadness, raises it to her lips and kisses the sign in the form of a cross. At the same time, the girl whispers, "Shuit." The daughter of the Festa family once again stretches out her hand, which emits a magical glow. The sword hangs in the air for a while before ending up in Kayla's hand. Kayla turns her hand straight and stares defiantly at the family heirloom, a sword that has been owned by several generations of men from the Festa family. But in this story, everything is different. The girl got the Shoet symbol. Shuet and Citro are treasures of the Festa family, passed down from generation to generation. Only the head of the family could own them, who had to become a knight and bravely defend the honor of his family. Kayla realizes that she has encroached on the title of head of the family with her desire to get the Shued. However, she doesn't care. Kayla looks at her brother, who has approached her father, and thinks that the main thing in all these changes is that Franz will get a Citro. After all, if the boy has a strong Citra, which even the King of Spirits cannot pierce, then he will definitely be safe. And the girl, as you could already understand, is very worried about her brother's well-being. However, Kayla Fest is in no hurry to rejoice. She continues to look at the boy, whose hand is covered in a soft green glow, and realizes that the exchange she and Franz made will completely change the history of the family. The morning after the ritual, joyful Franz rushes into the room to his sleeping sister, slamming the door loudly. He has a package under his arm. The boy smiles widely and, squinting his eyes, says that the uniform of the Cartier Academy has arrived. Kayla, who is not in a very good mood due to such a peculiar awakening, sits on the bed and makes a remark to her brother. She says that Franz must not be very well-mannered if he allows himself to barge into his sister's room without knocking. The guy guiltily scratches the back of his head and apologizes to his sister. Then he takes Cartier's uniform out of the package, a white shirt and a swamp-colored jacket with a skirt. The girl looks at the clothes in shock and says it looks like a green algae latte. Franz, not noticing his sister's surprise, joyfully asks what it is. Kayla is already getting angry and says that the shape is fine, but the color just looks terrible. Franz, who is no longer so cheerful, silently watches his sister's reaction. Then the boy blushes a little, covering his mouth with an envelope with a red seal, and says with a laugh that he does not always interpret his sister's words correctly. Kayla, seeing the envelope, instantly forgets about her recent irritation. She approaches her brother and asks what kind of letter he is holding in his hands. Franz is a little lost, but in a second he joyfully answers that it is from the senior student Latius. After these words, the girl's face becomes very pale. Kayla stands still with a green uniform in her hands and silently asks herself, "Latius?" The girl's face is contorted with an insidious grimace. She starts to laugh evilly. Kayla sarcastically recalls Latius Izar, a tall and stocky green-eyed young man dressed in an expensive uniform. Lataus is the eldest son of Count Izar. He turns 19 this year. He is Franz's roommate in the Kreitier dormitory. Also, the young man recently received the status of a knight. The girl's brother smiles joyfully, and making puppy eyes says that Latius found out about his deduction and wants to come to the estate of the Festa family. But Franz's cute look doesn't work on Kayla. The girl's blue eyes flash with anger, and she firmly says that Litas's foot will not be here under any circumstances. Franz looks somewhat startled by such a sharp response. He cautiously asks his sister whether he heard. At the same time, the boy reminds a disgruntled Kayla, who crossed her arms on her chest, that the eldest son of Count Izar is her fiancé. The girl knows this very well, but the problem is that she does not want to marry Litaus. Such a groom was not chosen by Kayla herself, but by her authoritative father. While the daughter of the Festa family is in her thoughts, Franz's hand lightly squeezes her shoulder. The guy gently tries to convince his sister that Litaus is a good person and a reliable friend. Without his support, Franz, who does not know how to stand up for himself, would have found it much more difficult to study at the academy. However, Kayla does not want to hear about the arrival of Count Izar's son. The girl collects her thoughts and angrily begins to justify her refusal. Franz listens carefully to his sister, but suddenly she stops mid-sentence. The girl does not know how to tell her brother that they are in the world of the BL manga Magic Mirage, where all men feel attracted to Franz. But it's not very good. For various reasons, many of them will try to harm Franz in the future. Kayla turns to leave the room. Franz, stuttering, tries to stop his sister. He looks at the girl with wide blue eyes and asks what happened to her. An ordinary, modestly furnished room. The clicking of laptop keys is heard. The wooden door creaks open and a boy in black pants and white socks carefully enters. He turns uncertainly to his sister, whose brown hair is tied in a messy short ponytail. The girl is unhappy that she is being distracted. She, not taking her time from her work, makes the assumption that her brother came to her because he ran out of pocket money. The boy lowers his eyes and silently agrees with this, nodding his head. The sister exhales in exasperation and finally turns to face the boy. She asks what is wrong with him. The girl does not like that her brother treated the money he recently received so lightly. Then the sister examines the brother from head to toe and begins to cling to his appearance. Like why, of all the clothes she bought, he only wears a school uniform. The boy stands still, not daring to contradict his sister. The girl looks angrily at her brother and is about to say something to him. Sweat runs down his face. The boy starts to get very nervous, which is why he grabs his shirt sleeve. The sister turns back to the laptop screen, supports her head with her hand and sighs loudly. The girl tells her brother that it is precisely because he always wears the same clothes that everyone focuses on his life without parents. This behavior of the sister can be understood, because she works day and night to ensure a good future for her brother, who is now looking at the floor. Then the girl closes her eyes and loudly orders the boy to go to his room and study. Finally, the brother raises his voice and quietly asks if he can just pass the qualifying exam, instead of going to school every day, where he is already disliked. The sister is even more annoyed by such a question, and clenches her hands into fists. She turns her head to the boy and, tapping her fingers on the surface of the table, tells him not to talk nonsense. There is only 6 months left until the end of studies. After a second, the girl adds that school is needed not so much for gaining knowledge, but for teaching life in society. And for that, the guy with tears running down his cheeks is clearly not ready. Sleeping Kayla, who is probably having a not-so-pleasant dream, begins to whimper piteously. Morning. Festa's family is having breakfast in the dining room. The father is at the head of the table. His wife and son sit on his right, and his daughter on the left. Also in the room are 2 maids and 3 guards, dressed in expensive black suits. Kyle is not very interested in breakfast. Thinking about something, she raises her fork to a plate of canned peaches. Franz, worried about his sister's lack of appetite, asks the girl about her well-being. Kayla replies in a bored tone that she's a little sick. Mother suggests that it has something to do with Sir Litius. The father, who can see a hint of irritation in his eyes, says he heard that Kayla did not allow her fiancé to visit their family. The girl immediately turns her head towards Franz and gives him a devastating look. The boy, noticing this, continues to eat and pretends that he is not here for anything. The head of the family raises a fork with a piece of meat to his mouth, and wisely says that the good and sincere Litius is the best match for his daughter. Franz, not realizing that he is digging a hole for himself, supports his father with the words, "Yes, sister, I would very much like to see him as my son-in-law." Kayla, whose face has turned very pale with anger, growls faintly. She believes that her brother is too naive, and in order to protect him, she must somehow refuse to marry the son of Count Izar. Kayla is worried about Franz. And it is not only the fact that Litios has feelings for the boy that scares her. No, the real fears arose not because of this at all. The girl tightly grips the silver glass with her fingers and plunges into her thoughts again. Kayla imagines her greatest fear involving Litios. She is afraid that if the young man becomes her husband, he will involve his crazy cousin Aster in this story. The fact is that when Aster was still a child, only Litios took care of him. The young man became almost a father to his brother. However, Litios could not devote all his attention to Aster alone, as he had 5 other brothers and sisters who also needed love and care. That is why Aster was very jealous of the only person who truly loved him. According to the story, this jealousy will harm Franz. First, Aster will harm the boy and torture him, and then he will destroy the entire Festa family. Kayla's face becomes somewhat angry from these thoughts. She grips her glass even tighter and tells herself that it is absolutely impossible to contact Litios. Kayla's father's office. The girl knocks on the door. The man who is writing something at this time allows his daughter to enter. The girl asks her father if they can talk, and when he agrees, she irritably says that it is about Sir Litios. Kayla says she wants to break off her engagement to this young man. The man does not like this idea. He, starting to get angry, asks his daughter what she is talking about. The girl was ready for such a reaction, so she is not going to back down. She shows her father the hand with the mark of Chouette on it, and then says that she and Litios are heads of different families, and she needs a husband who will serve only the Festus family. Kayla's father is getting a headache. He does not understand why the girl thought of this only now. The man brushes off his daughter, who tries to tell him something, and says that he needs to think about this difficult decision properly. Kayla is disappointed. This time, her stubbornness and determination could not overcome her father's authority. The next day, the girl wants to ask her father about his decision regarding the engagement, but the man pretends not to notice her daughter. This situation is repeated several times. Finally, Kayla catches her father, who has been trying to avoid her all this time. The girl grabs the man's shoulder and smiles sweetly. The father himself is shocked by this turn of events, but it is too late to run away, so he has no choice but to start a conversation with Kayla that is unpleasant for him. The girl joyfully asks if he has thought about breaking off the engagement. The husband is trying to calm his daughter down a little, because he has not decided anything yet. Kayla starts to get angry, hoping it will affect her father. The girl says that she does not want to marry Sir Litios. She also adds that she herself will find a groom that will please both father and mother. The husband is very tired of his daughter's constant chatter about this, so he agrees to Kayla's terms. The satisfied girl asks, "Really?" The father tiredly wipes his eyes with his palm and confirms his words. He then says that he will make a decision about breaking off the engagement while Kayla is in Crater. The girl smiles broadly and says that she has something else to say to her father. He begins to panic, fearing that his daughter will start clinging to him again. Kayla, with an innocent smile on her face, announces that she has already sent a letter announcing the break-off of the engagement to the Izar family. A large, bright room with a sofa in the middle. A girl with pink hair gathered in 2 ponytails is sitting on the couch with her legs bent at the knees. She is carefully reading some letter. Suddenly, a stuttering guy in the form of Crater, Litios, bursts into the room. He tries to catch his breath and turns to the girl. "Astel!" Litios speaks, reminds that he asked her to warn him before making a visit. The girl smiles thoughtfully, brushes a strand of hair from her face and asks the boy not to call her Astel when they are together. Litios corrects himself by speaking, "Aster!" It seems that now the girl is satisfied. Smiling broadly, she informs the boy that a letter has arrived from his fiancée. Litios immediately snatches the paper from the girl's hands. The guy looks annoyed. He doesn't like Aster reading his letters. The girl grunts, gets up from the sofa and approaches Litios, hugging him from the back. She yawns and asks the boy what's wrong with looking at other people's emails. Seeing that Litios carefully reads each line, Aster asks him the question. "He says that he will join the academy after you." The guy confusedly agrees. The girl opens her pale purple eyes wide. She is surprised by the answer of Litios, who, squeezing the letter tightly with his fingers, adds that Kayla is also breaking off the engagement. Aster thinks for a minute. A warm, sunny day. The yard of the Festa family house. Franz and Kayla training. A tired boy asks his sister if he can rest, promising that he will work hard when she goes to study at the academy. However, the girl crosses her arms over her chest and says that she does not believe in this, because he, Franz, has never trained on his own. The boy tries to say that things will change now, but Kayla rudely cuts his brother off, telling him to shut up and start studying. Franz and Kayla's father, dressed in a blue uniform, raises his hand and orders everyone to take their positions. The training participants, including 4 stocky boys in dark leather jackets, obey the man. Franz's face is focused. He catches every word of his father, who meanwhile explains that today they will practice advanced defense. The man loudly tells his son to pull out the citro. The boy raises his wrist to his lips and then resolutely puts his hand forward. The citro sign flashes with a blue glow. A shield appears in the air, which should protect the boy from the 6 chumps who are going to attack him. The maids watching the training say enthusiastically that Franz's shield has become bigger than before. The boy's sister and some unknown man silently watch him. The son of the Festa family defends himself expertly. Suddenly, one of the attackers smiles, seeing a gap in the boy's defense. Franz gets a little lost and dodges the sword that is about to hit him. But this does not happen. 3 large shields fall into the air, which the boy, who has already collected his thoughts, directs at the fighters. The attackers' swords break. Someone tells Franz that he perfectly coped with the task. The boy's father laughs with satisfaction and proudly says that his son will soon learn the technique of territorial defense. Kayla, who is standing on the sidelines, is surprised, because it is so rare to see a father happy. Franz rejoices in his success, but says that he will hardly succeed in mastering the art of territorial defense, which is capable of covering a very large area. Kayla hums quietly and cheerfully tells her brother that he can do anything. But Franz is still a little unsure of his abilities because he still doesn't know a lot. The girl thinks that if her brother succeeds in becoming a citro master, she will be able to protect the lands of their region with the boy's help. Master Citro will be able to protect the entire imperial capital. His shield is so powerful that even Aster, who conquered the magic tower, cannot penetrate it. Franz looks at his wrist. It seems to him as if he and the Citro are components of one whole. The guy says with a smile that this sign obeys his will. Then Franz adds that he had never had such a feeling since the shows. Kayla looks at her happy brother and is convinced in her mind that Aster was right about the boy. If Franz had a Shuei, the conqueror of the magic tower would easily possess the son of the Festus family. The girl also realizes that perhaps Franz will become the first master of the Citro in the last century. A stranger in a black suit standing next to Kayla asks how things are going with the daughter of the Festus family. The girl's face becomes somewhat gloomy. She hesitantly replies that classes with Chouette are progressing well. The mysterious stranger is a representative of the Alta clan, who has served the Festus family since ancient times. Representatives of this family are very proud, but have many useful qualities: fencing, gathering information, intelligence skills, etc. Kayla knows this very well, so she thinks about what to say to her husband so as not to push him away from his family. However, nothing comes to the girl's head, so she has no choice but to come to terms with the fact that the Festus family will lose such gifted people. Kayla sighs quietly and tells the Alta clan that she doesn't think she'll make it into the Chouette master. Kayla's workout. The sharp end of the sword cuts into the girl's shoulder. Kayla grabs a wounded limb. The girl's opponent says that she made a mistake by exposing her left shoulder. Kayla sighs in exasperation, but calmly admits her mistake and says she'll try again. The girl's teacher is not satisfied with this behavior. However, she silently takes the sword and attacks Kayla again. This time also turns out to be unsuccessful. The girl notices the sword too late and does not have time to defend herself. The teacher loudly tells Kylie not to hold her weapon with 2 hands. The girl narrows her eyes and tries to concentrate. However, nothing works, and Kayla makes even more mistakes. 2 boys standing nearby are discussing the girl's training. One of them says in a boring tone that he doesn't understand where Kayla got these habits that make her keep making mistakes. Another boy criticizes the way the girl holds the sword. Kayla herself hears everything, but she is too tired to argue with the boys. Nevertheless, it is offensive to the girl to hear such sharp criticism of her abilities. Previously, she did not have to endure various ridicule. In the morning, a maid enters Kayla's room and says that she has prepared a special nourishing cream for the lady. But the joy on the maid's face quickly turns to horror when she sees a disheveled and tired Kayla on the bed. After a minute, the maid applies a small amount of cream to the delicate skin of the girl's face. The maid resents the fact that Kayla studies at night. The girl angrily replies that Alto advised her to develop endurance because she picked up the sword much later than the others. But the maid asks the girl not to overdo her studies, otherwise she will worry about her. Kayla gives up and agrees to lighten the load. Then the girl supports her head with her hand and asks the maid why she has been messing with her since the morning. Maybe she wanted something. The maid begins to speak uncertainly. Suddenly, someone starts knocking on the door. The maid asks herself who could have come at such a time. Kayla looks tense. Finally, the door opens, and a representative of the Alto family enters the room. The man tiredly tells the girl that a guest is waiting for her in the living room, Sir Lithas. Kayla asks in surprise, "Sir Litus?" She clearly did not expect that her ex-fiancé would arrive at the Festa family estate so quickly. Kayla clenches her hand into a fist, not wanting to meet this person at all. However, the girl asks the man, who is waiting for an answer from the daughter of the Festus family, to tell Litias that she will gather and come out to him in a minute. Alto bows and leaves the room. The maid begins to comb Kayla's long black hair and with pity in her voice asks the girl if she is really breaking off the engagement. The daughter of the Festa family is not moved at all by the compassionate voice of the maid. She indifferently replies that she is not breaking off the engagement, but has already broken it off. Not wanting to continue on a topic that is uncomfortable for her, Kayla asks where the rest of the family is. The servant, regretting that she started the topic of the engagement and thereby spoiled the young lady's mood, uncertainly says that Franz, as it were, went to the camp in the morning. But Kayla knows about this, because she personally collected the boy on the road. Thinking about what jewelry to wear, the girl remembers that her father is in the order, and her mother went to the atelier. It even seems to Kylie that Litus has deliberately chosen the day from now on when there is no one in the estate except for her. The maid brings up the topic of engagement again and cautiously asks why Kayla refused this guy. After all, Sir Lithas is a very good person. Kayla is silent. Terrible pictures appear in the girl's imagination, which could well happen in the real world if she became the wife of the son of Count Izar. In these pictures, the girl sees the crazy Astor, who brutally killed her. And not just killed, but cut her body into pieces and fed it to his dogs. At the same time, Astor himself appears as a girl in a bloody dress. She laughs and says that her dogs are well fed. She then thanks for Kyle Lithas. Kayla turns from her thoughts, touches her hand to the maid's hand and addresses her by name. The girl says, "Remy, looks are sometimes deceiving." A well-lit living room. Lithas stands by the door and waits for Kayla, and now they tell him that the girl has already arrived. The door opens and the daughter of the Festus family appears in the room, dressed in a beautiful blue dress. The girl is accompanied by Mr. Alto. Kayla tries to give a genuine smile and extends her fragile hand in an almost transparent glove to the boy. The girl tells Litias that they have not seen each other for a long time. The boy is surprised by such hospitality. He gets down on one knee and kisses the girl's hand. Litias and Kayla are drinking tea. The guy asks the girl a question, the answer to which he knows very well. "Do you want to break off the engagement?" Kayla, stirring the tea with a spoon, replies that she has already done it. It can be seen from Litaus's face that he is not satisfied with the girl's behavior. The boy says that this case concerns two families, the Festa family and the Izar family. Therefore, Kayla cannot make such serious decisions on her own. The girl looks at her tea and ignores the boy, who adds that luckily his father didn't see the letter about breaking off the engagement. Then Litias stands up and says that he will also pretend that he is hearing about Kayla's decision for the first time, to which the girl, raising a cup of steaming tea to her lips, says in a calm tone that she will once again send a letter to Count Izar. Litias looks somewhere to the side and realizing that it is useless to argue with the girl, but he decides to use the last argument. The boy asks if Kayla's father knows about Kayla's obsession. The girl angrily replies that the father not only agreed to break off the engagement, but also allowed the girl to choose her own groom. Litias is very surprised by such an answer. He by no means expected that the immovable Count Festus, whose word was always almost law, yielded to his daughter. The guy clenches his hands into fists and tells an indifferent Kylie that he doesn't even know how to react to her rudeness. The girl raises her eyes, which fall with anger, on the boy and asks why he, Sir Litias, is not interested. Why she decided to break off the engagement. She continues to speak to him. He asks how it is possible that an engaged woman from whom there was no news for a long time breaks off the engagement, and he is not even interested in the reason. Litias is drenched in sweat. Only after such words of the girl, after a long silence, did the boy inquire about the reason for breaking off the engagement. Kayla looked at him with undisguised disgust. She exhaled and silently thought that Letus had thought too late. But she pulled herself together and sternly answered that she was not interested in the wedding. Instead, it is better to focus on the affairs of your kind. We'll protect him. She left the room without touching the cup of tea that the servant had brought earlier. Liteus didn't like the girl's answer. He didn't understand what kind of family business it was about. The boy stopped Kayla. He wondered what she was talking about. After all, he knows that Franz must become a descendant of Festa's family. Kayla tensed up and started to get nervous. She didn't like that Litaus only thought about Franz. She nervously took the dress in her fist. The girl angrily replied that Franz does not like confrontations, and in general, life in a dormitory does not suit him. She came up close to Litaus, saying that he really thought that Franz, who was bullied even in the dormitory, would endure life in the order. Kayla kept saying that her brother had something he liked. Litaus silently thought it was him. The girl did not stop and talked about the fact that she wanted her brother to be free, but she did not have time to finish how Litaus interrupted her. He replied that you can study plants and birds as a hobby. The conversation turned into an argument. Kayla's eyes flashed. Litaus continued that if Franz becomes a knight and takes his house with him, it will have a positive effect on the family. They and Kayla should unite their families, because House Izar targeted their family. He advised the girl to think about it. After all, does the house need a head who is not destined to become a knight? Kayla was stunned and surprised. Litaus, on the other hand, continued to talk about the fact that Kyle is only taking away his promising future from his brother. Litaus suddenly took off and threw the glove from his hand. He invited the surprised girl to test her own swordsmanship skills on him. Kayla lowered herself to the ground, glancing at Litaus's white hand. He said an interesting condition. If the girl defeats him, then they will break off the engagement. Kayla agreed and they went outside. A sword rested against the girl's fragile body with a cold touch. She stood before Litaus without any fear. The boy was surprised by Kayla's determination. She snapped him back to his senses with a shout that if he suggested it himself, let him begin. He looked thoughtfully at the girl, and angrily replied that he had thought about her resemblance to Franz, which was not there. The girl did not take into account his words. Litaus set the conditions for the match. 15 minutes, and if the lady touches him at least once, the victory is hers. The girl enthusiastically agreed. The battle began. Kayla and Litaus took up fighting positions. The girl with a sparkle in her eyes dealt the first blows to the enemy. However, the girl's hand twisted, and in a few seconds her sword lay on the ground. Litaus was crushed and replied that she was terrible in battle. He said that a girl on Franz's level is like walking to the moon. But she sharply raised her sword from the ground and struck Litaus. But the boy, who was an extremely skilled swordsman, quickly struck back. He raised the blade of his sword to Kayla's throat and wrenched the weapon from her hands and laid her opponent on the ground. He replied after the girl stood up that if the fight was real, he would have killed the girl several times already. Basic skills are valuable, but it is important to use them in practice, Litaus continued. The girl was drenched in sweat. It was unpleasant for her to hear this. But suddenly a thought came to the girl. Holding the sword in her hands and analyzing Litaus's words, she realized that he was right. This is a real match and she cannot take advantage of her weaknesses. But there is another way out. Kayla turned decisively to Litaus. There are 3 minutes left until the end of the match and she demands a change of weapon. She took a heavy sword from the servants and shouted to try again. Despite the fact that it was difficult for her to even hold him in her hands, she demanded a duel. Litaus replied that she does not even know how to use a sword, and it is dangerous to take such a weapon. However, before he could finish, Kayla already struck the first blow. This course of events surprised the boy. He reasoned that the power of the attack had changed, and that Kayla was more skilled with the weapon she had picked up herself. So does the guy have a chance? Kayla started hitting the surprised boy. The match was difficult. Litaus dealt devastating blows to the girl, but she was more skilled and quickly knocked the sword out of his hands. Now she assumes a prophetic position. And with a smile on her face, putting a cold blade to the boy's throat, she answered that if it was a real fight, then his head would be at her feet. She turned her back and replied that she was grateful for Litaus's advice, because he was right. The basics are important. She left and replied that she would not see the boy off. A tense conversation can be heard in the last room of the tall tower with a clock. One of the interlocutors orders to send a bird with news if something happens. Kyle and Franz's mother start screaming. She does not understand why she is not allowed to send guards to the Kratier Academy with her daughter, because, according to her, there are so many monsters there. Instead, Kayla, who intervenes in the conversation, is already collected and completely calm. In a delicate pink dress and the same hat, she assures her mother that everything will be fine. Franz is also sure of this. He says that his sister will defeat any monster. And even before that, the sorcerers of Kratier defend the borders. But Franz also reaches out to Kayla. He says that if she has problems and it is difficult for her, he is ready to help and replace her at any time. He claims that he already has an excellent command of the Citro and simply cannot overcome it now. Kayla radiates calmness and pride for her own brother. The girl turns to him and asks not to worry. With a smile on her face, she says that her return would be a terrible shame. She promises that she will definitely return home at night, thanks to him and their family. The father intervenes in their conversation. Both children turn their heads to him. He says that Kylie needs to go already, to which the girl agrees and is going to go. Kayla didn't forget to ask her mother if there was anything. Is there a certificate for the transfer, a train ticket? The girl nods affirmatively. The father is still not sure of the correctness of his own decision. He doubts whether everything will work out for Kayla. His eyes are cast down. He is tense and anxious. The father, surrounded by his wife and son, asks his daughter to protect herself and, if necessary, to send a bird to report on the latest news and important events. The father hugs his daughter. She is a little alarmed and upset and does not show her own emotions. She raises her clear blue eyes and waves to her family with a smile and goes on her way. The announcer's voice can be heard on the platform. Passengers of the magic train are asked to go to their cars and take their seats. The announcer repeats what has already been said. People bustle on the platform. Kayla looks both ways. She stops at platform 8 in search of the right train. Asks people if this is the platform she needs. But suddenly he hears someone exclaim, "Lady Estelle." She approaches a place where many people have gathered. They surrounded the girl, who was obviously sick. Kayla was interested in what was happening. She watched how the girl was addressed. They asked her if she could go, how she felt, and what hurt her. The people asked whether the girl was sometimes mute. Kayla remained standing like that. She was still watching the events, not understanding what was happening. There were many servants near Estelle. It is clear that this lady is not a simple aristocrat. She was looking directly at Kayla with pink eyes from under the hood, causing her unpleasant feelings. Kayla, seeing Estelle's face, was extremely surprised. After all, the lady was incredibly beautiful, and Kayla wondered how such a thing existed in reality. She was a fairy or a sorceress, but by no means a human. However, Kayla quickly pulled herself together and realized that she had been staring at the girl too much. However, she still did not understand what was happening and how it was possible to look so beautiful. Also, holding the suitcase in her hand, Kayla did not understand why she knew the girl's face if she had never seen her before. All this depressed the girl. She did not understand anything. Kayla heard the cry of a child asking her mother about the magic train. The boy fussed that he also wanted to ride it. Kayla could hear the crowd cheering as she stood back. A magical train was approaching. People were delighted and dreamed of being in it. Kayla covered her eyes with her hand against the bright light. She did not understand what was happening. Suddenly, a train appeared out of thin air. A bright blue light illuminated him. He slowly approached the platform. However, a figure in a black cloak climbed up on one of the carriages. What did it all mean? Here the figure began to approach. A red cloak was visible, the edges of which hung from the train. A terrible sound of impact was heard. Everything around stopped. But after a moment, people started screaming. The people shouted in panic that a bloody demon was falling on them. Those who could save themselves, everyone understood that evil spirits were attacking the train. There was complete chaos around. Frantic human screams of fear and pain could be heard. The roof began to break with a crash. The people did not understand where to put it, how to save themselves and what was happening in general and how this was possible. An announcer's voice was heard, asking passengers not to panic and to go inside the station. Kayla stood and watched everything. The noise made her nervous and it was clearly visible on her body. One eye twitched reflexively, but she still tried to pull herself together. Keep calm and move in the direction indicated by the announcer. The guard of the station shouted to the people to come inside. Chaos reigned everywhere. The room was engulfed in black smoke. But suddenly everything stopped. It became quiet. People are completely confused. Someone shouted from the hall that there was a dead person on the platform. The bloody demon, anticipating fun events and the satisfaction of his own appetite, stuck out his purple tongue and became active again, all burning. Too suddenly, everything began to fall on people. They screamed and tried to run and save themselves, but it was too late. One man, standing behind, felt a cold touch on his own body. He realized what had happened, but he didn't even have time to scream for help, as the bloody demon had already overpowered him. The man lay dead in the arms of the unclean. He belonged to her. Kayla did not understand what was happening. She stood and watched everything, understood that she should also run, but her body did not listen. Suddenly, the girl saw in front of her the same incredibly beautiful girl who was sick on the platform. But there were no servants near her. Instead, white smoke was billowing. She was wearing a beautiful blue lace dress with her mouth closed and just standing there. The demon did not stop and continued to wreak havoc. He did even more damage, more and more victims. People did not believe in their own salvation. Kayla, seeing the scale, quickly controlled herself and touched her hand. She said, "Chouette," and immediately in front of her, a knight's sword appeared in front of her, illuminated by a blue flame. She quickly grabbed him with one hand. Astel covered her eyes from the bright light. The girl did not understand what had happened and what Kyle was up to. However, at one point, a demon began to approach her, his red cloak fluttering in the wind, carrying the smell of death. Astel covered her hands and began to scream. She did not believe that everything could end so quickly. But at the last moment, a fragile girl appeared in front of the formidable demon, illuminated by a blue light. Kayla. Without any fear, she began to deal devastating blows to the enemy, forgetting about her own ineptitude in using a sword. This one was hers. He was family and obeyed her will. Kayla covered the unfortunate Astel with her own body. She fought for her and for everyone present at the station. Their lives depended only on her. She must save everyone present here, because now she is a knight and it is her duty. Kayla, with an angry glare, was silently formulating a plan of action. She understood that she had to destroy the demon before he did more harm. She must kill him with one blow. The weakest place is the neck, so you can't miscalculate. The girl suddenly, unexpectedly, even for a demon, jumped up high. And despite her own fragility, in front of the formidable demon, she quickly raised her sword and swung it high and sharply. A large stream of black blood spurted from the demon's neck. With a cry, he began to serve, and his red body was flooded with black blood, forming a hellish mixture. However, this mixture no longer lived. Kayla covered her face from the furious flow of blood. Her dress began to deteriorate. It was stained with demon blood and was tearing on its own. The girl realized that this blood was not ordinary at all. There was something wrong here. Astel, who had already managed to get up and control herself, covered her mouth with her hand. She understood that it was absolutely dangerous here and she needed to leave here immediately. Kayla interrupted Estel's thoughts by asking if she could move. The girl was surprised and scared. Her eyes were round. She did not know how to act in such a situation. Kayla was still waiting for an answer at that time. But having never received it, she took the situation into her own hands. She quickly took Astel by the waist, who could not come to herself. She asked for forgiveness and began to help the girl move. Sword still in hand, she took the frail and frightened Astel into her arms. She warned that it might be a bit uncomfortable, but you have to be patient for a while. Astel trusted her savior and hugged her by the neck. Kayla was adamant that she would take Astel to safety, and that she had no reason to worry. The two of them broke away from the ground and moved upwards thanks to the strength of the night. Astel didn't fully understand what was happening. She looked at her savior with admiration. Her pink eyes widened with incomprehension, fear, but indescribable gratitude to Kayla. She moved boldly, looking only ahead, intent on rescue. The two girls, illuminated by a blue glow, landed on the ground. A demon was waiting for them below again. Astel landed too hard and injured her leg. The girl fell painfully. Her assistant started fussing next to her. He was worried about her and said that they needed to go to the shelter immediately. But Astel did not hear him. She was thinking about her own savior. Looking at her from behind, Astel silently spoke the name of the knight, Kayla Fest. Kayla was thinking about something completely different. The demon came at her again and she bravely repelled the blows. The girl deftly held a sword in her hand, dealing devastating blows to the enemy, but defeat was not included in his plans. The girl realized that it is pointless to pierce the demon because it does not kill him. She needs a wooden sword, the only way to defeat the evil. Suddenly, everything changed dramatically. The station was filled with red and blue-yellow light. A bloody struggle between the two forces of good and evil continued. Kayla quickly glanced at her own hand and spoke the words. Suddenly, the desired and necessary wooden sword appeared in front of the girl. She was happy that she succeeded and began to attack again, but now victory was definitely on her side. The demon froze. He was in shock. He was amazed by the girl's strength and seemed to understand that his defeat was coming. The girl stomped her foot sternly and with a murderous look began to inflict another blow on the enemy. She jumped sharply, which equalized the combat positions. But she quickly climbed up and began to attack the demon from above, surprising him even more and angering him at the same time. Kayla landed the first punch. Painfully and suddenly, she hit the demon in the knee, trying to knock the demon off his feet. Next, she grabbed the blood demon's fur with her hand and began to pull with all her might to finally get the desired victory. The demon went even more crazy. Kayla met his gaze. Her bright blue eyes flashed with passion and hatred for the unclean. People watching the battle were sweating. They believed in Kayla, but fear prevented them from thinking or doing anything at all. There were shouts from the hall that Kayla was stabbing the demon. And it was true, the girl continued to strike the demon. She pierced his body with a wooden sword. They started shouting again at the station. Someone called for the guards to occupy their own places and to evacuate people. People still did not understand what was happening. A boy with emerald eyes in a white and blue robe appeared in the center of events. He shouted the command to form and fire after his respective words. Kayla continued her fight against the demon. She pierced his body and struck terrible blows. Suddenly, she heard a surprised exclamation. "Kayla Fest!" The demon covered himself with his hands, blood dripping from him. The knight quickly left the demon behind, who was writhing in pain. She walked forward, her bloody dress blowing in the wind. The demon was slowly dying. The people, coming to their senses, began to wonder how such a fragile girl defeated the demon herself. They were interested in which house she was from. At that time, the boy's face was covered with sweat. People kept talking. Someone in the crowd had already learned that it was thanks to the show from the house of Festus and continued to wonder. Estelle made her way through the crowd, pushing people. Suddenly she stopped. The hood fell back to reveal her light pink hair. Suddenly someone touched her and hugged her gently. The boy asked Estelle to be more careful in the future. He was interested in her well-being. At that moment she directed her pink eyes like her hair to Kayla, because she had saved her and was kind to her, which surprised Estelle. Kayla was surrounded by a crowd at that moment. Everyone expressed their admiration and thanks to the girl. She awkwardly thanked everyone, still not moving away from everything that had happened. Estelle was walking away with the boy when Kayla remembered who it was. Aster Lishi Elbach. The girl was possessed by incredible anger. In the center of events are the character's thoughts. It is depicted on a black background decorated with white roses and tells its own story. All his life he imagined himself as a girl and wore women's clothes. Actually, he is depicted in a dress with lace, heels on his feet, and a teddy bear in his hands. He liked soft toys. Tea services, toy tableware, everything that girls used to play with, he loved, it was his. Before going to sleep, he read fairy tales about a princess walled in a tower and her heroic rescue by a handsome prince. At those moments, he was lying on the floor in a lush dress and threw his legs back, as girls often like to do. Imagining the princess in the tower, he understood that their destinies were similar. But when his prince, his knight, appears, once he even thought that his prince was Liteus. Oh, beautiful Liteus. He decided to become his wife. Wear a dress to match the color of his light pink hair, and the bride's bouquet will be made of beautiful lavender flowers. However, Liteus quickly destroyed Astel's dreams. He said that he cannot marry someone other than him. It is a total injustice. And although Astel stood opposite Liteus in a dress, heels, and a bow was tied on his head, he still remained a boy. And because of this, it is impossible for Liteus and Astel to get married. For him, These words were too painful, because he never considered himself a boy. Litaus entered the academy. Standing back in an elegant dress, Astel listened to his words. He looked out the window and thought that they would not be able to see each other often now. He exclaimed that he would also go to the academy. After all, he can go to lessons with Litaus. Such words tired Litaus. He exhaled and asked Astel to calm down. However, he did not like such an appeal in his direction. He shouted not to call him that because he was Aster. Litaus did not object and repeated everything he had already said. But saying Aster's name calmed his brother down. However, Litaus spoke about what Aster did not like. She can't go outside, at least not yet. The guy who thought he was a girl started to get angry. He shouted when he would finally be able to go outside and how long he would have to hide his hair and pretend to be a girl. Litaus tried to calm his brother down. He informed him that soon the emperor would visit him. Aster clenched her fists. Litaus asked Aster to calm down, convinced that the emperor could not forget about her. She shouted that the empress killed their mother and it was all absurd. Such words put Litaus in an awkward position. He was surprised, he felt sick. However, he quickly pulled himself together and said that his mother had died of an illness. Litaus began to have a headache. He tried to end the conversation, again asserting that Aster cannot go outside. His Majesty Lishi hid the fact that he was the last descendant of the Spirit King all his life. Aster still did not understand, because the kingdom of spirits has long since fallen and there is nothing to fear. However, Litaus had an answer to this question as well. Aster's power, which she received from the Spirit King, frightens His Majesty and everyone around her. She must understand this. Someday she will be able to live under her real name Aster. But so far she has been given two personalities for a reason. It is right and necessary. In the meantime, she needs to live as Astel Izar, until she becomes so strong that no one can harm her. Litaus hugged her tenderly. However, Aster still could not calm down. She is tired of loneliness and the world allowed for life, which is too small. Looking out the window, she said that the world of Litaus was getting bigger and bigger. It worried her. It's not fair, she's all alone and it upsets her. The girl lowered her head, she was extremely sad. Further, the noise of the railway is in the center of events. The train arrived and girls in green uniforms got out. They saw the girl and began to whisper to each other. This is something extraordinary, they say. Kayla got off the train. She examined the place where she arrived. Others discussed her. Someone envied and someone admired. The girls kept quiet. They gossiped about the expulsion of Franz and his sister. Everything was interesting to them. Kayla was quickly greeted by a security girl. She indicated the direction of the surprised Kylie, led her to her destination. As they walked away, everyone continued to talk about Kayla. They also remembered the recent events about the girl's victory over the demon. A security guard led Kayla to her room. They were met in bright rooms by Kayla's neighbor, Philia, cute girl with brown eyes and brown hair. The door behind the guard closed. Kayla began to look around her new room, thinking about the recent events. In the room there was a 2-story bed covered with turquoise bedspreads. A vase and brown furniture added coziness. Cozy and atmospheric. Philia interrupted Kayla's thoughts. They got to know each other, which was long overdue. Philia looked at Kayla in wonder. She said that she is not a high aristocrat and Kayla can address her in a friendly way. Philia was surprised because for the first time someone from the lady called her a friend. Kylie liked the modest and sweet Philia. She smiled with satisfaction. Kayla, wrapped in a towel and with her hair in a ponytail, walked down the hall with Philia. The girls were going to bathe. Philia asked about the impressions of the new neighbor, and was surprised that she agreed to bathe in the common bath. The girls entered the bathhouse. Kayla dipped her foot into the warm water. She went in there with her whole body, feeling the desired relaxation. Philia remained on the tile. She squatted next to the bathtub. Kayla asked why she didn't bathe. The girl replied that she had done it before. She also said that she came with her new neighbor because she was worried about not being bored. Kayla looked gratefully at her new friend. Suddenly, Philia's eyes flashed. She wanted to ask Kylie one question that had been bothering her for a long time. Kayla, of course, allowed it. Her friend's words reached her, but she asked if Sir Lytus really was Kayla's fiancé. The girl was surprised. She replied without any emotion that she and Litas had already broken off the engagement. Philia was surprised she did not expect this. Kayla continued to pamper herself in the bath. Philia kept asking about the breakup of the engagement, to which Kayla replied that it was due to family matters and that they were not suitable for each other in general. Kayla turned to Philia and asked what she was interested in. Did she know the third-year student from the Demirov family? Philia thought. She met such a girl several times, but she does not remember everything. Kayla waited for an answer. Philia asked why Kyle was interested, if she knew the girls she was asking about. But she answered that they were a little familiar. Kayla had once seen this girl up close. Extremely beautiful. She imagined her image. Fragile, pink hair, perfect features. It was always cozy with her. She gets tons of love letters, but she has a fiancé and they all get rejected. Unbelievable. Kayla thought that it would be better for Marion to end the marriage, which is not desirable for everyone. Philia asked if Kalia knew who the beautiful girl's fiancé was. Kayla replied that it was her brother. Philia was surprised by such an answer. Kayla watched her with interest. Philia replied that she had not even imagined such a thing. Kayla thought about the fact that they went to the same academy and pretended not to know each other. It was strange. The branch replied with a wry smile that it was their business. Do not gossip and there is no desire at all. Kayla looked into her light brown eyes and agreed. She liked her new friend more and more. The girls decided that it was time to go back to the room because it was already late. The next day, Kayla left for training. She was curious to see the classes of knights and which one would be for her. She, in the green uniform of the academy, stood in front of the director. Kylie told about the educational process and explained the chosen subjects: accounting and management. The girl silently thought that it was difficult for her. She smiled, because she understood that everything, because she wants to graduate from the academy as soon as possible. The director kindly continued. She said that core subjects are taught in Kayla's class. The girl will study in the classroom to which the director will now take her. She also noted that according to the rules, you need to walk gracefully in the corridor, like a real lady. Kayla replied with a smile that she knew about it. The director liked the girl. She thought that she was even smiling gracefully. It pleasantly surprised her. Kayla entered the auditorium, where she was already greeted by her new classmates. They discussed the girl. The director asked to greet the new student with applause. In the audience, only Philia radiated affection and admiration for Kayla. Kayla smiled and replied that she was glad to meet her new classmates. However, I already understood that the situation here is by no means the best. The headmistress pointed to an empty seat for Kayla. She went there, having previously expressed words of thanks. Kayla wanted to say hello to Philia, but she didn't even have time to say her name, as she turned to the girl and motioned to be silent. Kayla was surprised by the behavior of her new friend. She saw how the girls, including Philia, gathered at one table and discussed something. Suddenly, they quickly approached her. A blonde girl with emerald eyes held out her hand to introduce Kayla. Behind her stood two more girls. It was Lady Schuleman, a member of the imperial family. This surprised Kayla. She extended her hand to the girl and expressed the words of honor. The girls got to know each other and expressed admiration for each other. Lady Schuleman kindly assured Kayla that she would help her with any questions she might have at the academy. Philia ran up to the lady with the books. However, one of the girls who were next to Lady Schuleman scolded her. After all, she was busy and she turns to her. Lady Schuleman called Philia shameless and said she would talk to her later. And after all, she was busy talking with Lady Kayla right now. Philia asked for forgiveness with fear. She was afraid and ashamed. Sweat covered his face. Kalia was surprised by Schulen's behavior. She turned to Philia. With a smile and a twinkle in her eye, Schulen invited Kylie to visit their salon. Kayla asked in surprise what she meant. Schulen proudly replied that she had a club for girls, which included only aristocrats. There are such clubs in every dormitory, one for women, the other respectively for men. Each has its own flag, red and purple. To get there, you need to have an aristocratic origin, connections with the imperial family, and good grades. This is a club only for the chosen ones. At that time, Kayla thought that it was strict, because only the top could enter this club. She was increasingly surprised by the rules of the academy. However, Schulen continued to say that Kayla is of the Fest family, and that is why she has access to the club. She will have a chance to pass the selection. She held out her hand in acknowledgement of the girl's agreement. Kayla bowed to Lady Schulen. She said that she would think about proposing to the girl. However, Schulen was not satisfied with such an answer. She replied disgruntled to Kylie that there was nothing to think about. Kayla will remain emotionless. Schulen made a remark to Kylie. angrily saying that she should understand that her invitation to the club is already a great honor that should be respected. Kayla thought that she didn't care at all. However, she did not show her own emotions. Instead, she calmly said that she now has many family problems that she must solve. Shulin, not without humiliation and sarcasm, asked if it was sometimes because of Franz. Kyle was not touched by her words. She calmly smiled at the somewhat angry interlocutor. Shulin decided not to cause a conflict, but nevertheless said that family problems are really very important. She understands that. The girls were standing in the middle of the class and seemed to be finishing their conversation. Lady Shulin turned her back on Kayla and was about to leave. In parting, she said that she would expect an answer from Kayla. She remained standing in the middle of the audience. She looked after the girls with whom she had recently talked and analyzed everything that had just happened. Later, the life of the academy appears in the center of events. Girls in the audience discussed their own problems. Someone complained that he had gained extra weight. Another girl asked Kayla to write off. She obviously did not like all this and was disgusted. Someone quietly entered the sunlit room. The door creaked open. An upset Philia stood at the door, but a difficult conversation awaited her. Kayla sat on the windowsill and asked her neighbor why she pretended today that they did not know each other. Philia didn't know what to say. She could not connect sentences for a long time. But still she said that it was all for Kayla's sake. She was outraged by such an answer because she is only friends with Philia at the academy and she acts like this. It's not very nice of her. Kayla did a pretty good acting about being lonely and hurt. Philia started biting her nails, fretting over Kayla and berating herself for her strange and inappropriate behavior. However, Kayla quickly reassured the unhappy Philia. She began to explain her own behavior. It turns out that the girl could not talk to Kayla because she was worried about her reputation and what the aristocrats might think about her. Kyle was surprised by these words. She exclaimed that it was nonsense and did not understand her friend having such thoughts, because the difference in status is not important. The following is about Lady Leodra, or rather rumors about her are circulating throughout the academy. It is said that she cannot stand a common dining room, does not talk to ordinary people, and does not go to a common bath. Kayla's dialogue with Philia continued. Kayla still questioned her neighbor's actions and the nature of her thoughts. Philia, lowering her head, answered that it was better not to violate the rules established in the academy, and not to go against the wishes of the noble ladies. Last time when the lady started making friends with the likes of Philia, she was bullied. Lady Iris was hated and abused. However, Lady Leodra even began to interfere in the affairs of Aster's father. She ruined the life of their whole family. Kayla thought to herself that she was a real tyrant. Disgruntled, Kayla replied to Philia that it was nonsense to call every aristocrat a lady. She was annoyed by the rules of the academy and the inequality between people. She asked sarcastically if she was Lady Philia's servant, if she was so proud and afraid of her. Philia lowered her eyes awkwardly and asked Kayla for forgiveness again, but she was surprised by her friend's behavior. She did not understand why he was asking her forgiveness for so long. She said that Philia had no reason to worry about her. She is from a family of knights and they have no reason to quarrel with Suleiman. She also added that no one will cover their business for sure. Philia was glad to hear such words. Her eyes lit up and hope appeared. But all the same, she warned that if they start bullying Kayla, it will be a big problem. She smiled and assured the worried Philia that everything would be fine with her, and there was no reason to worry. She looked into Philia's brown eyes and said that she wanted to be friends with her, and she will be very upset by ignoring her. Philia was extremely happy. She said that she was very happy to hear this and would try with all her might to maintain friendship between them. She began to tell Kylie about her own feelings. She talked about what happens when she sees a lady. Not her, Leodra. The body seems to be numb. She can't do or say anything. The fear is too strong. The focus of the story shifts to Liteus. He picked up some papers from the table and curiously studied their contents. It was a newspaper with a front-page story about the demon attack on the train station and Kayla's heroic act. The photo depicted how the evil one inflicts the last devastating blows. Aster was sitting on the floor. She angrily cut the newspaper. Liteus inquired about the nature of her actions, to which she replied that she was cutting out articles from the newspaper. She was excited and angry, but she quickly pulled herself together and asked with a smile if she was the girl depicted in the fight with the demon who had killed her brother. Liteus did not answer anything. Instead, he asked why Aster was collecting photos of Kayla, but she answered that it was because of her incredulity. She admired her. Litaus was surprised by this. He did not understand his sister's logic, and she did not understand him, did not understand how such beautiful photos could be thrown away. The girl, continuing the case, said that thanks to her, she did not have to use the power of spirits and no one knows about her until now. Accordingly, there were no terrible problems, and that is why she admired Kayla, because she saved her. Litas crossed his arms and thoughtfully replied that she was now Kayla's first fan. It looked a bit funny. The girl continued to talk about the incredibleness of Kayla. I asked my brother about Shuei and Citro, and she was not at all worried that he was not listening at all. But the girl suddenly remembered that her brother should not be here. She asked when he was going to the academy. He replied that those who received the status of a knight can travel without obstacles. The girl was happy and remembered the times when she called her brother to the academy with threats. The question arose as to why he is here. He replied that because of his brother's search. Litas lowered his green eyes. Word reached Aster that while he was with her, she was not allowed to go out. Guards were placed around. She didn't seem to hear him, looking at the photo of the incredible Kayla. But she broke away from her work and said that the station was also under a protective spell, and it did not give any result. She asked if she knew what was mixed into the water she drank while at the station. Litias tensed. Sweat dripped down his face, but he replied that it was a drug that was draining the mage of his strength. That is, the attack was staged. Aster continued to cut out the photo. Litias said that the archives contain information about the purchase of the drug, and that the perpetrator of the events will soon be found. Actually, the drug was bought by Ted Wyson, who was guarding a stair that day. She kept looking at the photo, but tensed. She said with sarcasm that the Empress's roof was gone. It was impossible to release the bloody demon. Litias worried about his sister. He noted that the successor will be chosen soon and they will want to get rid of her. The girl laughingly replied that there was logic in this, because she was not a native child. Litaus did not let her finish. He emphasized that she was a descendant of the Spirit King and that was all. However, Aster's thoughts were about something else entirely. Her eyes lit up. She said that she dreamed of meeting Kayla Fest. Litaus was surprised and asked why his sister was meeting with Kayla. And it is still impossible at all, because they broke off the engagement and their relationship is far from the best. The girl agreed with her brother's words. But she was interested in something else. She didn't know what she would do when she met Kayla. It is worth thinking about. A thought came to the girl. First she will feed Kayla, then drink her own signature tea. Joyful Aster exclaimed that after that she would talk to her savior for a long time. She had already imagined this scene. How she will sit at the same table with Kayla, how their meeting will go and what topics they will raise. Litias still did not understand what Aster was for. However, she reiterated that she simply wanted to see and talk to Kayla. To find out what kind of person she is. Isn't it forbidden? Litaus was surprised. He answered that no, but before he could finish, Aster suddenly stood up and the scissors she was holding fell loudly on the floor. Litaus remembered Kayla's image. Her black, wet, clear blue eyes. But he quickly pulled himself together and tearfully told Aster not to make trouble. After all, because of her, they already had to hire the healer Lishi, which is not good at all. The girl laughed. She was holding her stomach and could not utter the words. She said that she had no intention of torturing the servants in the future. Litaus was already opening the door, but Aster continued to speak. She had her brother set up a meeting for her with Kayla. That's all a girl needs. Academy. Kayla practiced fencing. In the yard, boys and girls deftly attacked the mannequins intended for the lesson. Kayla was showing skill. She skillfully dealt blows to the enemy. Her teacher even praised her. The young man applauded the girl and said that she was an excellent fencer. He continued to say that there are results from individual classes. Kayla thanked her mentor with the heat of battle in her eyes. The teacher announced a break. He ordered to assemble in 10 minutes and for now let the students rest. A blonde boy approached Kayla. He held out his hand for introduction and said that he finally met her, which he was very happy about. Kayla looked at the boy with interest. She had never seen him before. This surprised her. At that time the guy bowed and introduced himself. He is Nicholas Chard, Kayla's teammate. He offered to talk a little during the break. He asked about Franz, his injuries. He said that he felt very bad without Kayla's brother. With a sly smile, he talked about the death note and mockery of Franz. Kayla was getting angry. She tried to calm down. She convinced herself that a completely different person was to blame for her brother's injuries. But she clearly didn't like this guy. She extended her hand to the boy. She asked not to call her lady, and they got to know each other. The guy replied that he was embarrassed by the girl's words. They exchanged friendly smiles. Nicholas said with a smile that he missed Franz very much. They were very close, and he was glad to meet someone from the house of Festus at the academy. Kayla turned and tensed. After all, she had never heard of this guy. Were they really friends with Franz? This question worried her. Nicholas was surprised. He figured Kayla wouldn't get along with her own brother if she didn't know about him. The boys behind him were whispering loudly and laughing. Kayla angrily replied that she knew everything about her brother. They have a close relationship. Her eyes lit up. The bell rang for the first lesson. The teacher announced that the break was over. Kayla left the boys after hearing the coach's voice and hurried to train further. Nicholas smiled wickedly, but he also followed the girl to training. However, he suddenly shouted that he challenges Kayla Fest to a duel. This surprised everyone present and the girl herself. She did not understand the boy's intentions.